Hi, this is Dan Harris, and welcome to the Ironbird Podcast. On today's episode, we have Casey Miller. He's a founder and president of Latitude 33, a great aircraft management and charter company. Casey, we'll dive right into it. Do you want to tell us how you got started in aviation, and then what brought you to starting your own aircraft charter management company?
Yeah. Well, first, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you got it.
Good to see you. So my story, I learned, basically learned to fly not a stone's throw away from where we are right now at the Palmer Airport. So back in the 70s, my dad met my mom at a flight school. My dad was a young flight instructor. My mom was the young girl behind the desk trying to keep the flight instructors from hitting on her, which thankfully for me, it didn't work out that well. Yeah. So yeah, aviation has literally been in my blood since day one. Mm-hmm. So learned to fly, soloed on my 16th birthday. It was a Saturday, the DMV was still closed. My parents had to give me a ride to the airport so then I could go fly an airplane kind of backwards. But yeah, I mean, it's been one long life of aviation. So grew up around here. My dad became a PSA pilot, which is kind of like the original Southwest Airlines. You know, back in the 70s, it was the go-go boots and, mm-hmm. All that. And as a kid, I remember, 8, 9 years old, some kids would get to go to work with their parents. I got to go to work with my dad. And this was, cool. Yeah, it was awesome. This is before 9/11, so there was many times where he would sneak me into the cockpit, and I'd go. I mean, he'd do 4 legs a day up and down California. That was kind of the airline's model, and I'd be sitting in the jump seat, wide-eyed 8-year-old shooting an ILS into San Francisco, going, "This is awesome.
That's pretty
this
cool.
Is pretty cool."
Yeah.
So luckily, I was kind of introduced to aviation, young. I went on to basically, my dad's thing was, solo on your 16th birthday. Teaches you work ethic and all those things. If you ever want to fly again, great. If you don't, great. Like, I at least want you to do this. And he was still a flight instructor. He kept all of his ratings current. So he did all my training, sold on my 16th birthday. And, I was in high school. It was girls and sports. I'm like, I don't want to do this. There's no passion for it. So gave it up until about sophomore year of college. Kind of at that point, it's like, what am I going to do with my life? What the hell's going on? Got back into aviation, and it was right time, right place, fell in love with it. And it was full speed ahead, from that point on. So got my ratings quickly, built a lot of time as a fish spotter, actually down here in San Diego. So we'd fly over the ocean, spot swordfish for commercial fishing boats. They would hand harpoon them. That's how, most of the places, if you go, not really as much anymore, but back then, if you got swordfish at a restaurant, 9 times out of 10, that's how they got it.
Wow.
Hand harpoon them, bring them in. So it was a great job for a college kid. It was like, 8 hours a day. I was wearing board shorts and flip-flops, listening to like Generation 1 iPod, flying around 8 hours a day. It was great. Built time there, and then was just lucky. My senior year of college, my roommate was good family friends with a company that flew freight Learjets out of El Paso. Mm. Got me an interview, and got the job, and went from, grew up in San Diego, went to college at UC Santa Barbara, and then moved to El Paso, Texas.
A little different. Yeah.
This is how real life starts.
Yeah.
But it was a great job. It was $18,000 a year, I think, in the right seat of a Lear, flying down to Mexico, picking up car parts, and distributing them throughout the U.S. Wow. But it was a foot in the door.
And like 35 or?
Oh, yeah, old Lear 35. Yeah. So I went basically from flying pistons to the right seat of a Lear 35, which it was a handful.
Yeah.
So did that, and then from there went to work for one of our alma maters. I won't name any names, but Bad Macy it rhymes with. No, went to work with Clay Lacy. I had a great time there. Learned a ton. Worked there, and was flying as much as I possibly could, 1,000+ hours a year with the ultimate goal to get on with the airlines.
Yeah.
And I did, and I got on the airlines, and it was kind of like the dog that caught the car. It's like, now what?
Yeah.
I went from flying, 28 days a month, giving up my days off, just trying to build time to get to that next step. I got to the next step, and I was bored. I mean, I went from 28 days a month to 12 days a month. So through that boredom and just ultimately wanting more through aviation, I got put in touch with a guy who owned a Citation jet, CJ1 Plus. On my days off, started working with him. He was an owner pilot, teaching him how to fly the airplane, and it was great. And then 3 months into it, I realized no one's really managing the airplane. I didn't really know what that meant at the time, but databases weren't being updated. I mean, he didn't know what he was doing. Yeah. I didn't necessarily know what I was doing.
What was he doing that he could buy this airplane?
A dairy farmer. Yeah, he amazing guy. I really appreciated my time, during doing that. But sold basically a big dairy farmer. I mean, schools, everything. I mean, supplied all the milk. But the funny part was, I mean, he bought a brand new. This was 2006, brand new CJ1 Plus for however many millions they were going for back then. And to him, it was basically a piece of farm equipment. We would go fly somewhere. They'd go to a cattle auction, come back with cow crap all over their boots, and I'm trying to I just finished vacuuming the airplane, and they just jump right in like no big deal, and we go off to the next spot. I mean, it was just very different from my previous time flying charter and kind of
entertainment and
exactly carbon copy difference.
Yeah.
So a couple months into it, I pitched him on. I said, hey, no one's really looking after the airplane. How about you pay me a little bit, flat fee per month, and I'll manage this airplane. Again, fake it till you make it, kind of figuring out what does this mean now. So I started doing the databases and started scheduling maintenance and working through all that. And through that kind of relationship, back in the 06, 08, Cessna was selling a lot of airplanes to owner pilots, especially on the West Coast. So got a good relationship with Cessna, and for them it was kind of a, hey, to their clients, they could pitch, here's a turnkey solution. We sell you an airplane, that's the first step of it, but how it looks from that point on, it behooved them to have a really good, clean, seamless experience.
They want people to stay in those airplanes, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So enter me, and I was kind of that next level or next step in their ownership. So one CJ1 Plus became 2, became 3, became, I think by 2009, I think we had started in 2006. By 2009, I think there was like 9 or 10 airplanes under management.
Wow.
I was doing that, still juggling my airline job, on the side. And it really just kind of started as a side hustle. Again, I was bored, got put in touch with the one airplane, that grew. And then 2009, I had some kind of life events. My dad, who again was my aviation mentor, passed away from a heart attack at 61.
Wow.
I was, I think, 29 at the time. So obviously that was traumatic. And then my mom, about 18 months later, passed away from a stroke.
Wow.
So it was like, over a course of 18 months, life was upended.
Yeah.
And it, at that point, I kind of felt the plates that were spinning start to wobble a little bit. It was just too much going on. I was juggling multiple jobs and all these things. So it was basically two paths forward. One, was to shutter the company. I don't even know if you could call it a company at that point. It was still just me, and maybe get rid of majority of clients, go down to 1 or 2 clients, keep the good ones, and that would be it. Which would be a shame. I'd spent so much time building all these clients. Or 2, bring in some help. So long story short, my current partner now, Solomon Short, was doing some contract flying at the time. We'd known each other. He was around the same airport, and he had previously built a bunch of 135 companies from scratch. Had that background, all the things that I didn't have, it was the yin and the yang. It was like the perfect partnership. So he came on and basically pitched me, hey, you've got all these 91 airplanes, let's take it to the next level. I'll write the manuals, we'll start our own 135, and we'll be off to the races. So thankfully, instead of pulling back like I was wanting to do, I leaned into it. He came on, and best decision I've ever made in my life, and kind of how that partnership has gone and how the company's gone. So
did you look at buying a 135 versus starting it from scratch?
I didn't want 135. I had my
Smart.
Aside from the family issues I was having, like I had this great gig. I had these 9 or 10 Part 91 CJs. Like, this is easy, for the most part easy. Why would I want to overcomplicate that with 135? He was the one, thankfully, that had the background and came in and said, no, like, we don't need to buy something. I've done this before, and wrote the manuals and went on with it. So no, we didn't even have to look into buying.
How long did that take to start? Like, all right, we're going to do 135, and then to the point where, all right, we have a 135 and we're operating. How long? What's that process look like? How long did that take for you?
For me, it was easy. It was like overnight, because I didn't do anything. This was about 2010, probably 6 months maybe from, and we started very organic, single pilot, single airplane, and then just built from there. And every couple years, we'd add on another layer. It's multi-pilot, multi-airplane, and add new areas of operation, and all those things. So it's kind of synonymous with how we run the company. Very slow, methodical. We're not the kind of company that in the beginning, we never had any debt, never taken $1 of debt. We didn't get the fancy office and all the phones and sit around waiting for them to ring. It was kind of just, let's do this organic, let's do it the right way, and let the company ultimately speak for itself and build on its own.
You were focused originally in Palomar and Carlsbad in the San Diego area. How did you take the company from, maybe a single airport or a single area company, and now you're in how many airplanes you have airplanes now, and you've grown much larger out of a single airport. How do you think you did that, and what spurred that growth?
Yeah, so we're about 35 airplanes now. On the small side, we're PC-12, NGX, CJ3, Phenom 300, Sovereigns, Excels, a bunch of Challenger 300s, 350s, which are really kind of the workhorse of the super mid fleet, and then all the way up to G550, a couple G650s on the high end of it. So, really, again, we started as a CJ company, and a lot of it was just organically as those CJ owners stepped up, they bought a little bit bigger of an airplane, and and they continued that. And luckily, as you know, a lot of airplane owners can't stay in the same airplane for more than a couple years, which is great for management companies. So yeah, a lot of it was just organically growing, and then as far as branching out from Carlsbad, it was really word of mouth. I mean, as you know, you don't advertise in this business necessarily, at least not very effectively. So our Palomar Carlsbad owner had a buddy in Van Nuys and said, hey, you got to talk to these guys. They're doing a great job. I've been with them for years. And it kind of just grew that way. Bigger airplanes became bigger and more areas. So yeah, now, like I said, 35 airplanes, pretty much West Coast based, but we've got airplanes in Texas, Colorado, but for the most part, West Coast, up and down the coast.
For us in our company, we tend to kind of not reorganize, but we've got our 1 year plan, our 5 year plan. I feel like we're changing it we tweak it every 6 months. When you were first starting, you made that kind of first leap with Solomon. What was kind of the next big kind of changes in the company? And then as you're going forward, how are you now looking at, all right, here's what we're doing now, here's what the next 5 years are going to be? And is that tough to kind of stick to those, like that plan?
Yeah, I'm horrible when it comes to planning. I mean, this, like I said, this was a side hustle. It started from a side hustle. There's no business plan. There was no this or that. It was just put your head down, work hard, do the right thing, treat your clients well, and whatever that yields, it yields.
Yeah.
That's it. So, we kind of joke in the beginning. We sat down after we got the 135, and we came up with a 1, 3, 5, 10-year plan. And I'm not saying this to pat ourselves on the back, but it was like the 1 year we accomplished in 2 months. The 3 year it was like 1 year. It's like, just everything was happening so quick, and we enjoyed a lot of success in the beginning. So since then, it's kind of a joke of like, we can come up with these plans, but really it's just, again, like I said, do right by the client, put your head down, do the right thing, and it grows from there. So what 5 years looks like, what 10 years looks like, I don't know. We're pretty happy. I mean, I don't really want to be a 70 airplane company by design. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think, like I said, 35 airplanes, I think it's just big enough where we can compete with the big guys on majority of pricing and what we can offer. But yet, I still know all of our clients by first name, of course, their kids' names, their birthday, like all those things. Like they can pick up the phone and call myself or Solomon at any point in time. I think that's a kind of a good balance. At some point, as you ramp up and scale and grow, you enjoy economies of scale. But I feel like you get to a certain point, it's almost diminishing returns. What it would take to run in infrastructure and everything else, a 70 airplane company, I think margin-wise, it starts to drop off, at least from what I've seen. Not that I want to do that anyway, but that's kind of where we're at.
Would you ever bring the company into another section of the business and FBOs or operating more, maybe 145 maintenance, operations?
Yeah, we've looked at it. We have a 145 repair station that our DOM wrote and put together. Again, as you know, in aviation, there's some big cost centers and big pain points. In general, it's kind of nice. We like not being the one working on the airplane. Again, not that there's anything wrong with the companies that do that, but as a management company, not being the one working on the airplane, that's a huge cost pain point. I want to be an advocate and on your side, going against the OEMs and all those things. And the money that we would make, in my opinion, it would be overshadowed by the pain and the damage that it would do to the relationship. So, yes, we have it. During COVID, when it was, you would call one of the big OEMs and say, we have an AOG, when can you be here? And it was, sure, we'll be there in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We were doing a lot more work because we needed the airplanes flying, but by design, it's not something where we're trying to generate revenue and do that.
What about acquisitions? Would you ever look into acquiring another 135, or even, would you ever want to grow maybe your charter brokerage side of the business?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a future there. I mean, we know a lot of companies, a lot of operators that are getting more into that brokerage side and trying to, whether it's diversification or increasing revenue, it makes sense. I think from a broker side, I want to be in control of our product. Again, it's something you deal with on a daily basis.
Hard.
We've been burned more times trying to broker out, farm out trips, just because we do things a certain way and we assume that everybody else does them that way. Again, we're not perfect, we're not the best out there by any means, but in my opinion, I think you tend to water down whatever good brand you have. It's very easy to water it down. So probably we do a little bit of brokering. Just for select clients with select operators.
You get airplane owners, right? You can't take a phone call from an airplane owner when their airplane's down. You say, oh, call somebody else because or we don't have an airplane available for you. I'm sorry.
Exactly. Or the good retail client that you always fly on your airplanes, but that one time you can't. You never know. You pass them off to somebody else, or you don't service them.
You don't see them again.
Exactly. Yeah. There's lots of different ways to go with it. I think just try to keep it simple, stupid, and just stick with what you're good at and go from there.
Whenever I was on the operator side, I always knew that there was a ceiling to the amount of revenue that you could create in fleet, right? And if we ever wanted to go past that, we had to go into brokering. But not only can you not control the quality, but you also risk your certificate. So there's a real risk there for operators that, hey, if something goes wrong and now this, risks my certificate, my core business. I mean, that's a big risk for a lot of airplane operators when they do kind of go off fleet and broker. And, sometimes it may not be worth it to, if something were to happen that's out of your control, but the FAA comes and looks at it and says, oh, maybe your paperwork wasn't right, or maybe this insurance was incorrect. Now you're risking your whole business on your 135 and 91 side. I mean, it could be dangerous for operators sometimes.
Yeah, and like I said, I think don't outkick your coverage. Don't grow past what your core company is. We don't have any debt. We don't have to continue to grow for the sake of growing. Like we're in a very fortunate, nice spot. So no need to push it in certain areas, certain times.
As a pilot, that's, how much flying are you still doing these days?
Well, I went from, like I was saying early on, I was 28 days a month, 1,100 hours, 1,000 hours a year, to now I'm probably 4 or 5 days a month. It's good. It gets me out of the office. In a weird way, it kind of recalibrates and readjusts my headspace. Like if I'm working on an issue within the business, non-flying related, and I go and I jump in an airplane, it's just the way my brain works. I'll be focusing on what I'm doing, obviously flying the airplane, but my brain in the background solves a lot of issues. I don't know. It's
your
strange.
subconscious now is kind of in a different place.
Definitely, yeah. So I do 4 or 5 days just to get me out, and I still love it. I mean, I love it just like I did when I first started.
What are you flying now?
So
I'm assuming the bigger airplanes now?
Yeah, no, yes and no. I recently got checked out again in a CJ3.
Okay.
So flying that a little bit. Otherwise, that's really a majority of what I do. Yeah, I still technically have the airline job. It's kind of more just a hobby now, but that's a 767, and that's a couple days a month.
Yeah. How do you think being a pilot shapes how you approach hiring, training, and really like retaining pilots, which I think is one of the biggest kind of question marks in our space right now? Is how do you keep pilots happy, and how does it, with you being a pilot, how do you approach that maybe differently?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Solomon and I, my partner, are both still active pilots. Came from originally being a pilot. I think fortunately we're kind of in a hiring lull right now as an industry. I think as soon as the airlines start hiring again, that vacuum is going to turn on and start sucking pilots from the light jets to the mids to the heavies and go back up. So, coming out of COVID, it was rough for all of us operators. Trying to keep pilots and hire pilots. We're getting kind of comfortable now, but I think that other shoe is going to drop at any point here, and we're going to go back to having to work for it. But I think first and foremost, having a good chief pilot, having a good HR department is paramount on it. Our chief pilot does a great job of selecting guys, keeping them happy, and it's tough. Saul and I are, again, we're entrepreneurs, we're pilots, we're aircraft owners, we own a portion of an airplane. We're wearing all those hats, we're seeing that different perspective. It's easy for us to kind of, from a business owner standpoint, say, we should be doing this, we shouldn't be doing that as it relates to whether it's pilot compensation, days off, all those things. It's helpful to have someone that you trust and a chief pilot or whomever in your organization that can come back and push back against that and say, I appreciate that, but you want to get good guys, you want to keep good guys, we need to do it this way. And we always acquiesce and say, ultimately you're right, yeah, let's do it. So I think us, and whether that comes because we have a pilot background or not, I don't know, but knowing what's going to work and when you need to listen and when you need to put your foot down and say, we're going in this direction, I think it's helped a lot.
When you look at hiring pilots as an airplane owner, and you've got a group that maybe has like type airplanes and they pool pilots versus someone that does more dedicated 2 or 3 pilots to an airplane. Do you see an advantage to the pooled pilot structure versus the dedicated pilot, or maybe advantages or disadvantages of one or the other?
Yeah, I mean, I think, obviously, yes. The short answer is yes. There are a lot. On our light jets, primarily the CJ3s, we're all pooled pilots. We have a good bullpen. It's kind of like the Southwest Airlines model. We've got a bunch of similar types, similar pilots. One breaks, the next one's coming out of the hangar. One guy gets sick, next guy or gal is coming to fill that. So from a reliability, from a safety standpoint, it works great. And then on the larger side, larger cabin, we're mostly dedicated for the most part. Pros and cons, obviously, having the same pilot fly the same airplane helps on reliability issues, helps on the owner, knowing the owner's preferences and all that. So yeah, I mean, there's no one size fits all, I guess. It depends on the operator, depends on the airplane, depends on the account, what works best. But I think the mix we have right now is we've seen good success with it.
Yeah, I think if you're looking to get big hours, right, you need a larger pool if you're looking to get those huge hours. And from a service standpoint, if you're looking for more of a higher touch service, it's probably the dedicated type of way to do it.
Yeah, I think like you touched on, pilots, saying this as a pilot, so I'm not throwing stones, but they want to make as much money as possible. They want to fly as little as possible, and they want to fly the type of airplane they want. So yeah, I mean, you're going to hit at some point on a dedicated crew, you're going to hit a limit of where they physically can't fly the airplane anymore, unless you want ultimately a revolving door on the airplane where you're putting new pilots in every 6 months, which we don't want as an operator, the owner doesn't want either.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that with pilots not wanting to fly as much. When I think about AI and how AI is going to move into the space, I think scheduling is definitely one of the things where I think it could help. And when I look at scheduling, I see one of the biggest where I've had a lot of issues with, where we'll book a trip and then we'll go to schedule it, and then all of a sudden the pilot's like, oh yeah, I've got something scheduled that day, or or even, and this probably goes into owner approval process too, where do you think pilots should be controlling the owner approval process on their airplanes?
Yeah, I know you have opinions on it. I've read and heard, and I agree with them. I mean, I think it's crazy to me that I'm a client, I'm a charter client. I want to give you $100,000. The amount of pain points and pinch points that you have to go through to go from I want to give you money to here's an airplane that you can go take. It's astonishing that we're still in business as an industry. I mean, whether it's like, the stars have to line up. Okay, is the airplane open? The pilots are open. I've got a client, he books, but yeah, maybe the pilot didn't tell us that he was on days off, or he had jury duty or had a medical, or maybe the owner, it's just, there's so many.
Oh, maintenance is extending an extra day because we couldn't get a part, but it doesn't show in the schedule.
Yeah, it's amazing we can fly airplanes the way we do. I mean, with all the things going against us. So yeah, I think, and you and I have talked about it before, I think better scheduling software, which it's still astonishing. I mean, there's some great companies out there. We work with one of them, but it just seems like it's so far behind technology-wise. Our industry as a whole seems like it's so far behind technology-wise that there's got to be improvements. There's got to be an easier way to do this.
How are you in the team looking at AI? Is that in your 5-year plan at all of like, all right, here's where we think AI works for us?
I'm embarrassed. I'm 45 years old, and I feel like I'm like the 70-year-old when AOL just came out, like trying to figure it out. Like if I had grandkids, I'd be having them help me with AI. Like, but no, I mean, it's necessary. How it's going to shake out and where it's going to be best applied, I think there's certain industries where it's like, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I mean, mortgage businesses or things that are like, funneling a lot of info through it, it's a no-brainer. But to be honest, I don't know how we're going to do it. I think, probably the biggest thing, and you maybe have the number better than I do, but how many quotes does an operator quote for every one
3%.
booking, right?
Yeah, so every 100 you get maybe 3.
Exactly. So how much time is spent for your team answering those, going through that process? I think that's like the low-hanging fruit. Yeah. Fix that, and then everything else is kind of gravy on that. But no, we have to get better. We have to, this new won't hold.
I think you're right on the money. That quoting is definitely a low-hanging fruit, where you can now spend the time better communicating with, like, you not fix but improve the pilot and maintenance communication, that then improves how accurate your calendar is. So you move to an incredibly accurate calendar that gives the AI systems the ability to then know, all right, I know this airplane's available, I know it's crewed, so I know here's how we can price it. And then every once in a while, then you have to get over the hump of owner approval of the airplane owner saying, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, like, I might need the airplane that day, right? That's kind of the next hump. The other way I look at AI and the low-hanging fruit is, one, I don't want them typing in KVNY, KLAS anymore, right? It's like, you should never have to do that. But when you look at, like, trip sheets, when I request names from a client of their passenger names, it's like, I shouldn't have to type in Susie Johnson with a birth date, right? That's an easy AI uplift. So any of that easy AI, all right, they're going to do that. They're going to send that information to the operator, and really they shouldn't even be sending it. It should be some sort of direct link, right? I upload it into one system, it gets pushed into your system automatically. Yeah. So instead of like me typing it out, sending you an email, then you taking it, then you retyping it back into, like, the inefficiencies that we have in our technology process is like insane.
It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Just you outlining that right there. It's like, how are we still doing this? Exactly. I think the client side of it's going to be first. I mean, client follow-up, outreach, all the things. And I think we need to be careful with it. Again, we're not selling radiators. This isn't just a blast everything. It's not a, hi, your name here. We haven't heard from you in a while. Like, it needs to be still bespoke, high touch, but there's a better way to do it, for sure. And I'm excited to see where we go with it.
Yeah, because theoretically, if you've been flying for someone, if you're flying a client 2 or 3 years, you're starting to get really their pattern down. And where AI and a lot of these technologies can help, when you've got an airplane going out to Aspen, you can say, hey, Steve, I know you took this flight, a year ago, just an FYI, around the same time we got an airplane going out. All of a sudden he's like, yeah, I'll take that empty leg, and I'll make more money as a company, and now I get to offer this great solution to a client. Now he's stoked, right?
This episode is brought to you by Charter Flight Support, the only coverage in private aviation that protects you when an aircraft mechanical issue stops your aircraft from flying. CFS not only provides financial support if the replacement aircraft costs more, they also help locate and book quality backup aircraft fast. Learn more at charterflightsupport.com, and don't forget to sign up for their newsletter, The Fix, for real-time insights on private jet trends, aircraft types, and rates. This episode is brought to you by Video Valet. If you care about having the best in-flight experience on your private flights, Video Valet offers up to 1.2 million movies, shows, magazines, and newspapers, all available on board without the need of expensive Wi-Fi or hardware. Eric and his team at Video Valet deliver fully customized iPads to ensure that your preferences are met on every single flight. Whether providing my kids with their favorite shows or allowing me and my wife to catch up on breaking news, I personally could never travel without it again. Video Valet is offering a special promotion to Ironbird podcast listeners. Mention Ironbird, and Video Valet will add one free fully personalized iPad at no additional cost. Now to the Ironbird podcast.
Yeah. With regards to maintenance, we're kind of talking about a little bit, but why do you think maintenance is not, why is it complex, but why do you think there's a lack of maybe standardization in pricing? Why do things maybe cost different in one location versus the other? Why can you get a paint job cheaper here than the other place? Like, how can airplane owners get a feeling that they're getting the right cost of maintenance and they're getting the correct maintenance being done to their airplane?
Yeah, it's obviously it's a high dollar item when you own an airplane. It's funny. I think we still get responses. They're still behind on parts. We still get a automatic like back ordered, check back in 2 weeks. And I don't want to say they're still blaming COVID, but it's crazy that supply chain is as bad as it is in aviation in general. I think it's not to pitch the operator or the management company or tout them, but
pitch your own.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think having a good company in your corner that knows, again, something as simple as you need to order a windshield, it's on back order. Our guys or other good management companies know it's like, well, okay, well, I'm going to call so-and-so at this company. Like, you end up having to do the OEM's job by going around and trying to find and source parts. Yeah. We've saved, countless weeks and months through that. Our guys are really good at it. But yeah, I think it's having a good asset in a management company and a team that is cost sensitive, not at the point of losing safety or anything, obviously. Mm-hmm. But yeah, maintenance has been and will continue to always be a pain point on an airplane. And it's just a matter of having a good team to help you out.
You think that's where maybe AI can help too? Like tires, right? It's like a tire has a certain amount of takeoffs and landings, right?
Yeah.
So shouldn't you be able to tell after you're 75% of into that threshold that, hey, we're going to need a tire in the next 3 months. Should we buy it now so we have it so we're not waiting when something does happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, whether that's on the operator side, whether that's on the manufacturer side, to know that, hey, historically we've gone through these many parts.
Yep.
CJs notoriously have awful air conditioning systems. They break all the time. Every summer we know that we're going to go through a handful of air conditioning systems on a CJ. So, I mean, we've tried to non-AI order parts and have them standing by with the anticipation of that happening. But yeah, there's no question it can be done better, and I think AI will bring us there.
And what do you think the process is of throwing parts at a problem?
It's tough. The different hats I wear, entrepreneur, pilot, and aircraft owner, with the emphasis on the aircraft owner, it drives me crazy when we throw parts at things. But to the defense of our maintenance guys, sometimes there's not a better way to do it. I mean, you can troubleshoot all day long, all the way down to this part, but ultimately you end up at a fork in the road. It's like, it's either X or Y, and the only way we can figure that out is by throwing a part on it. So I think that's where, companies that have supply, they have inventory, they're able to put parts on and take them off and recertify them and do what they need to do to make them a good part again. But at some point you just come down to it where all else fails, that's kind of what you have to do. And hopefully you can do it as economically as possible, minimize the restocking fee if it's with a third party and all those things. But sometimes there's no better way to do it.
Have you had a situation like that recently where you just had to throw some parts at something? Like, what happened?
Yeah, and I think luckily we've had better luck than most, and those parts that we've thrown have been the right parts. And when they're not, we've been able to minimize the damage by paying a small restocking fee. Ultimately, if it's a $30,000 part, you hope that that's the issue. You throw it on, it's not the issue. It is kind of a nice backup that it wasn't the issue. You might pay a restocking fee, but at least you didn't have to pay $30,000.
$5,000 part now.
Exactly. It's a rheostat when it shouldn't have been the part. So it's a constant struggle. It's a juggle for sure.
What do you think can be done to, from a maintenance standpoint, to keep an airplane as efficient and reliable as possible?
We as we're pitching clients or even clients that are wanting to buy airplanes, as there's a big spectrum of how people use their airplanes. You've got some people that fly 50 hours a year and don't do any 135 and that's it. You've got people that fly 500 hours a year, a mix of 135 and 91. I think just like anything mechanical, an airplane is made to be flown. And those that are flying at 50 or 100 hours a year, it might feel good on paper, like I'm underutilizing my airplane, I'm keeping my Ferrari in the garage and it's ready to go, it's beautiful. But in our experience, those have been the airplanes that have the most issues, the most gremlins, the most bugs that you're constantly chasing. Airplanes are meant to be flown. And we kind of always tell people, again, when we're talking to new clients or existing clients, in general, an airplane needs to be flown about 250 to 300 hours a year. That's our opinion.
Yep.
If you can do that personally, Part 91, maybe you don't need charter. Maybe you're already utilizing it properly, you're not leaving any money on the table, great. Majority of people, as you know, aren't flying 300 hours a year 91. So that's where charter can become a good partner. Again, you're not necessarily going to make money with it, but you're going to offset your expenses, you're going to properly utilize your airplane, and ultimately you're going to have a reliable airplane in the end, has been our experience.
With the new tax laws that are coming out with the 100% depreciation, Are you starting to get phone calls now about, hey, I've got a tax bill coming up this year, or do you think you're going to get those in November?
It's always a fun phone call to get when it's, I've got a $50 million tax problem. Can I write a check?
Yeah.
My tax guy says I got a problem. I'm going to go buy an airplane. It's like, wow. A, I have the wrong tax guy, and B, like that's a good problem to have. Yeah, I mean, we had it back even when it was, before and as it started to sunset, we got those calls. As soon as that was signed and changed, yeah, the phone started ringing of people. Most people want to wait and maybe do it closer to the end of the year, like you mentioned, but no, I think that's going to be a good shot of adrenaline for the industry as a whole, and we'll see where it goes.
Do you think it's going to add more airplanes into the marketplace, or do you think people are just going to kind of move, airplanes are just going to move around a little bit? It's really not going to add more availability of airplanes in the marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, obviously the ultimate bottleneck is new airplane deliveries. There's only so many new airplanes that are coming. I'm sure you've experienced it with clients. Like, I want a G600, G7, name whatever airplane you want. Sure, no problem. 2 years from now or 18 months from now, you can pick it up. So, I mean, we're selling some of our slightly used airplanes, and we're getting, the owners are selling those airplanes for 20% more than what they paid for it back in 2019, just because people don't want to wait. They want that airplane. They want a newer airplane. They want it now. So, I think we're ultimately at the mercy, at the limit of how many new airplanes enter the ecosystem. But yeah, I think more airplanes that trade, more of the people, hypothetically, kind of generalizing, the people that are taking advantage of the bonus depreciation are probably people that are also going to charter their airplane out. So maybe you took a 91 only airplane that changed hands because of bonus depreciation, and now it's entered the 135 ecosystem.
Yep.
We all should hope that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think ultimately airplanes moving, airplanes changing hands, tax credits like that, it's a benefit for the industry.
We talked a little bit about AI, and I kind of want to dive back into it because
I don't, because I know nothing about it.
Well, dynamic pricing.
Yeah.
Do you think, say AI takes over and we start pricing like the airlines do?
Yeah.
What impact do you think that has, one, to the charter customer, and then maybe what about to the airplane owner?
I think just like anything, you'll have some clients that'll understand and appreciate it, and you'll have some that said, 2 weeks ago, you flew me from Van Nuys to Oakland and it was X.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, why is it X plus 15%, whatever that number is? I mean, and personally, we as a company, I don't have a good answer for that, so which is why we really don't do any dynamic pricing. It's our price is our price. Now, granted, there might be some things behind the scenes where that first flight, we didn't have to hire 3 contract pilots to backfill other trips so we can make the airplane available that ultimately we need to pass on to the client. But in general, it's one level of pricing and that's it. So I know other operators do more of a dynamic pricing and make sense of it, and it works for them and it works for their clients. That's great, but I think ultimately we could have all the technology, we could have all the AI that we want. If the end user, if the client isn't on board with that and understanding of that, they're going to go to someone else who doesn't have variable pricing and has fixed pricing. So,
with kind of the dynamic pricing, it kind of goes to floating fleet model. When I'm assuming you've probably taken a look at, all right, we've got these airplanes, we've got these pilots, we have these owners, could we float airplanes and make more money versus running what we call like a home base model, point and back to the home base? Have you ever looked at what it would take to move into a floating fleet, and what kind of was that decision tree when you're like, maybe this isn't the fit for us?
Yeah, we have. I mean, it definitely makes sense. That's why a lot of people are doing it. I'm pretty risk adverse. Like I said, didn't have debt, grew slowly, did it the old school way maybe. Not saying it's right or wrong, but yeah, we've looked at it. I think if done correctly, and you've got great people on the team that are familiar with it and know how to do it, it can work. But you can also start losing money very quickly when airplanes are sitting other places. So
got a Global Express sitting in New Zealand right now.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think exactly that kind of example. But I think from our standpoint, we're in the fortunate position of being able to keep our airplanes busy enough in general with the home base model that we haven't really been forced to get out in front of our skis and so to speak and look at other things. But no, if done correctly, I think it ultimately benefits the client because you're getting more closer to one-way pricing. You're keeping the airplane busy. It's tough with owned aircraft when the airplane's in Teterboro and the owner says, I want to use the airplane tomorrow in Van Nuys.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah.
But no, there's definitely a place for it, and we have looked at it. Ultimately, we can just fall back on kind of the way we're doing is working.
I've had some conversations with people about empty legs, and there's some people that are staunchly against empty legs, that they feel like we shouldn't sell empty legs or discount the empty leg flights. I disagree. I think, we're working on projects to build demand aggregation on specific routes, like our jet to Cabo, and we launched jet to Aspen, where we're trying to get rid of empty legs. But, do you think empty legs are bad for the industry?
I think it's a fine line to walk. I think there's always going to be a place for a client that needs to go from point A to point B at this exact time on this exact date. Not saying I don't care what it costs, but this is why I'm flying private.
Yep.
I want to lock it up. I don't want to think about it again.
Yeah.
Versus the client that is retired and can travel in the next 3 weeks. And so I think, yes, there's a place for both, and both can coexist. But I think expectations need to be set correctly. You don't want to sell an empty leg to the first guy who has to go on this date, this time, because empty legs change, and ultimately you're getting a discount because of flexibility and variability. Yeah. So, I think you need to sell it to the right person.
Yeah, and I think on the back end, the additional revenue, what are you not going to sell? If you've got someone that says, all right, I will give you 50% of what I normally should pay, or I can fly that airplane empty and collect zero.
Yeah.
Right? I see it as, yes, take the revenue, as long as someone's respectable to the airplane and pays and shows up, then yeah, I see it as a potential win-win. Sometimes that person might expect that every time, and as long as you're communicating correctly that, hey, you are getting a discounted flight because of these things, and this doesn't happen every single time, then I think could be a win all around.
Yeah, it's tough to manage expectations, because even you set all those expectations, when that empty leg goes away for whatever reason, they forget all that and they don't care. Do you want to risk an overall relationship with the client over one? Yeah. No one wins in that case.
Yeah, and this flight is created because it is another flight. If that flight changes or cancels, it will change or cancel. Yeah. That's a hard conversation to have with a lot of people. But when they're spending 40% or 50% less, I think setting those expectations, even though it's a hard conversation, a lot of people won't even have that conversation, right? They'll just sell it to that person. Hey, I got you a great deal, not understanding that, hey, this is under these requirements.
As long as it works, it works.
Yeah, I know, and the majority of the time it does.
Yeah.
And people ask me about that from a safety standpoint too, right? Oh, is this operator safe? Is this airplane safe, right? It's like the majority of the time these airplanes are safe, they're operated safely, but when you look at, call it the top 25% of safe operators and how they operate, how they insure airplanes, how they maintain, how they train pilots, wouldn't you want to work with that top 25% versus saving maybe 10 or 15% and working with a bottom? And even if your percentage of having a unsafe issue goes up 2% or 5%, it's like, why would you risk even going up a percentage? You're paying such a high amount to fly. Yeah. Wouldn't you want to pay slightly more to give yourself the highest percentage of flying safely?
Yeah, I mean, we see it a lot where, whether it's a retail client or broker, we'll quote a trip, they'll come back to us with hey, I appreciate the transparency, but they'll come back to us and say, hey, we've got a Lear 35 for this same routing that's $10,000 less. Can you guys match it in your 2016 CJ3 or 3 Plus? That should speak for itself. Yeah. Again, not to knock a Lear 35, got a lot of hours in it, but it's apples and oranges. Wouldn't you rather pay a little bit more, to your point, for something that is going to get you there and get you there safely?
Have you seen, maybe over the last 5, but really over your career, a shifting in client expectations? Are clients expecting things differently from in-cabin? And then do you think they're expecting even like the booking process differently at all?
Yeah, I think as other industries become more frictionless on how they operate, it's understandable that client would expect the same thing from their, again, like we talked about before, their aviation, who you're paying 10x, what you're paying for your Tesla service or whatever it is, and that's way easier to interface with. So yeah, I think, obviously Wi-Fi, that's a given. Even 5 years ago, it wasn't expected. Now it's for a lot of trips, especially bigger cabin, as you know, it's hard to book trips without Wi-Fi. So yeah, I think, Wi-Fi is going to become where it's a necessity.
Yeah, I would say even the smaller airplanes, even light jets.
Yeah.
Even light jets, people are demanding Wi-Fi and light jets.
Which it's all about how you sell it. The ones we don't have, it's like, wouldn't you rather just spend some time with your family and just, be unplugged?
Yeah, exactly.
Not to mention we don't have a Wi-Fi airplane for you, but just spend time with your family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're taking light jets, your average light jet flight time is probably 1.1 or 1.2 hours anyways.
Yeah, we might be a little bit higher, 1.5 or 6, but still, but I get it. I mean, it's kind of like, if it's a Jim Gaffigan joke or whatever, it's like you get on an airliner that you didn't even know had Wi-Fi and they tell you it was broken. And it's like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine, it's like, we didn't even have this 5 years ago, 6, however many years ago it was, but you get accustomed to it. I get it.
Do you have airplanes that have Starlink?
We do. And it's been a game changer. I mean, again, no offense to GoGo. They're obviously trying to come up with what their competing products are with Galileo and other things. But yeah, our 550 and one of the 650s, and also our XLS Plus, we just put it in. And it's a game changer. I think the only negative, and hopefully time will solve this, is, they don't have unlimited plans, at least not that I've seen. And you go from, GoGo's was slower, you're going to use less megabytes. With Starlink, it's like foot on the gas. I mean, we have airplanes that are, it's crazy how many gigabytes you can use in a month. So I think there needs to be maybe some, and there are not really any guardrails on that as far as like limiting some streaming services and things like that. Again, it's not a one size fits all, but I think ultimately Starlink is going to need to kind of get a little bit better with that if they want to capture the market as a whole and not have them go from, GoGo's what, $3,000 to $4,000 a month for unlimited. We're seeing some of our clients that are paying $10,000, $8,000, for that same domestic-only product. It's a big jump.
Yeah, and especially as you move down to smaller airplanes, the budget of a G550 or G650 is a little bit different than an owner budget of a CJ3 Plus.
Yeah.
That $10,000 a month is a lot different to that airplane owner than maybe. I mean, it's still a lot either one, but the percentage of the budget gets a lot more in those smaller airplanes.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer on the big airplanes that we're paying, $15,000, $20,000 for whether it's KA band or whatever else. I mean, now they're paying a flat $10,000 for basically worldwide coverage. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, and the speeds, you're actually sometimes getting better speeds in the airplane because your latency is less because the time it takes to you're 40,000 feet higher to ping that satellite than you would be on the ground. So it's like the speeds are incredible.
We're hearing the same. We're hearing owners are saying, I have better speed in my airplane than I do at my house. And that's with, 6 kids on iPads, streaming and everything else. I mean, it can handle the volume for sure.
Have you seen different trends in just airplane owners and fleets? Are you seeing more people trend to larger airplanes or more people trend to newer airplanes? How have you seen that throughout the last maybe 10 years?
Yeah, it's strange. We went through a period, and some of this might have to do with bonus depreciation back when you could only get it on a new airplane. Mm-hmm. That was, made it really easy for people to justify buying new. I feel bad saying this for all of the friends we have that are selling brand new airplanes with these manufacturers, but it's been a while since we've had a client buy a brand new airplane. And again, part of it's the lead time.
Yep.
I want an airplane now. I don't want it in 18 months, 24 months. So I feel bad for the sales guys trying to sell a product that far in advance. But no, I mean, I think the used market has been solid, a lot of movement there. I think in general, like I said, people own airplanes for 3 to 5 years and they tend to move up, not down. Yep. So most of our clients are all moving up to bigger airplanes, very few are moving down. That said, I think, to be a successful operator, I think you have to have a nice cross section of both. I mean, whether it was COVID or 08, having those light jets, in our opinion, in our experience, the light jets recovered before anything else did. So coming out of COVID, we were great. Our light jet fleet started flying immediately. We're doing road shows. We're doing all these things that we're doing, pre-COVID. And then slowly the super mids and the heavies kind of woke back up. So, I think being a well-rounded, diverse company like that, it's make or break.
What advice would you give to maybe someone that's starting their first 135 and they've got a Citation Mustang? What advice would you give them that you think would give them, set them up for success as a 135 and hopefully give them, things to focus on over the long term?
Don't do it. There's way too many companies out there. It's too hard. You don't want to join. No. I mean, I obviously I would welcome it. I think competition makes a better product for us all, whether we like it or not. It forces us operators to be better. There's 2 different trains of thought. And again, Solomon, my partner, is the expert on it. I'm just the sales guy, I guess. But I think I've seen more success in people that organically write their own manuals, start their own certificate, I don't want to say they have more ownership in it, but they understand it better, and versus, the people, again, nothing wrong with it, but go out and write a check and buy a certificate. So I think it's a long, hard road. We sometimes joke that, margin-wise, you're almost making more, thinking back to those days when we only had a couple airplanes.
Yeah.
You kind of, half joking, half serious, like long for those days. Like,
Yeah.
it was so much easier. We're not making exponentially more now. So maybe enjoy the beginning stages, because it gets better, but it also there's a lot more work that goes involved in it, more moving pieces for sure.
For you and for Latitude, what are you looking for? What do you think the best airplane owners are? Like, who are the ones that are a good fit for Latitude 33?
Yeah, not saying there's anything wrong with either side. We tend to not be the best fit for the owner. And again, I'm not knocking these type of owners, but that can maybe just barely justify owning an airplane, and
That need the 400 hours of charter to make it make sense.
exactly, or else it doesn't pencil out. And there's a lot of really good advocates that help people buy airplanes, but there's also not a lot of good ones. And we've seen so many times where somebody will get sold a 1986 G4 for $2 million, and it's like, look how much airplane I can buy for $2 million. Well, it's kind
They
of
try and drop it out. Hey, Casey, I've got this G4. You can fly it. My broker said it'll make money, right?
Yeah, that works, right? I'm gonna make money on this. So, those type of people. The joke is, and again, I'm not throwing stones, but any schmuck can afford to buy an airplane, but it takes a really rich guy to operate it. And I think that's not any more true than on like those type of airplanes. So people get sold into this pipe dream of $3 million G4, and then all of a sudden, year one, they just paid that $3 million acquisition budget and operating costs. So, again, there's a place for those airplanes, and there's people that do it great and better than we do. Yeah. That's just not our market. That's not our client. I think it's, the people that are going to use their airplane. It's a sweet spot between an expensive enough airplane where it's still new, it's still modern, it's still relatively cheap to operate, and they're going to utilize it properly. But they also recognize the value of doing some select high quality charter to help offset their expenses and make their operating budget a little bit lower. I mean, I think that's our client.
And who do you think are the best pilots that tend to come fly for Latitude?
Controversial for sure, because obviously you've got, the young pilots coming up, and you've got the retired pilots going down, I guess, so to speak. We've done both. We've had great luck with both, and we've had bad luck with both. It's very different. For the retired pilots, retired airline guys, especially ones that didn't have an general aviation background, it's very different. When you go from here's your flight plan, here's you sit in the cockpit and you go, to I'm loading bags, I'm cleaning labs, I'm doing my own fuel planning, flight planning. Again, it works for some, it doesn't work for others. But no, I think again, you can't generalize either way. I think it's the right person, it's the right personality. I think in this, whether it's 135 or 91. You have to have kind of a can-do attitude, and there's no job too big or too small. Your client services, all those things, and you have to lean into it and enjoy it. Ultimately, it's an interesting business.
For people that want to own an airplane or own an airplane that are interested in your management services, what's the best way for someone to get in contact with you?
Yeah, so Latitude 33 Aviation, Google, hopefully will pop right up if our SEO guys are doing their job. But L33jets.com is our website, and reach out through there, and we'd be happy to help.
Awesome, Casey. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You got it. That was the Iron Bird podcast with Casey Miller, the president and founder of Latitude 33. Thanks.